Well, hello everyone and welcome to Filtered the podcast. My name is Phil Dye and this particular episode is the second of my interviews with Mark Hornshaw, the Director of Policy for the Libertarian Party. Now, if you're in Australia, you'll know that early May 2025 we have a general election, and there are, of course, the two major parties going for election. We already have the Labor Party in power, but there's also a plethora of minor parties, and the Libertarian Party is one of those minor parties. In the first episode, the last episode, we talked about education, we talked about deregulation, we talked about family, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about a big topic in Australia at the moment, and that's immigration. And we'll be talking about free speech. And in the last third, Mark will be answering a few questions that came in from listeners to my email. So, without further ado, we'll go on with immigration, the libertarian perspective with Mark Hornshaw. Another area that the Libertarians focus on is immigration, and this is a big issue in Australia at the moment. Can you just take us through a couple of the points of the immigration policy?
I mean, we've got currently a very bureaucratic immigration system in order to get a visa or permanent residency. The government says, we think that we have a shortage of these particular professions. So we're going to allow, 1,000 bricklayers and 2,000 hairdressers, 3,000 accountants and so on, because that's the quota that we think we need. But how does a bureaucrat know that, firstly? And secondly, how does a bureaucrat know that the 3,000 people you give visas to with an accounting degree are actually going to get accounting jobs? Most of the time they don't. So we have people with master's degrees and doctorates who are delivering Uber Eats. Yeah. Right? They can't actually get a job in the thing they're qualified for. It just happens that the qualification was what got them their visa. It's not actually a pathway to a job in that field. So we want a market-based approach. Instead of bureaucrats deciding on quotas, the employer who wants a particular person would be able to sponsor that particular person to come. Now, we think that there should be a fee for immigration at least for permanent residency. So
the family or the person would have to pay a fee to you, or their host would have to pay a fee. Would that be right?
Exactly. They can pay it themselves. Their employer can pay it. A benevolent person might pay it for a refugee. We have roads and we have hospitals and we have a lot of public infrastructure.
Yeah.
Who owns all of that public infrastructure? The best ownership claim over that is the people who've been taxed to pay for it. And so a person who arrives in Australia just gets to use all of that public infrastructure. So we think if someone is charged, but let's say it was 100,000 just for argument's sake, you wouldn't just pay it randomly for anybody with a qualification. You'd pay it for the person who is, going to actually be hired in your business. That 100,000 covers, their contribution to the public infrastructure, and that would mean if you want a person for your business, you would only pay that if you've found the right person.
Which really means they wouldn't come here unless they had the work, and you would then in some ways become responsible for that person. And if they acted outside of the values of Australian values, for example, joined a demonstration against democracy, then both the host and the person may not be welcome anymore.
I'm not sure exactly how that works in terms of deportation. I'm not an expert on all of the the laws surrounding that, but you'd be less likely to have a person come here for the wrong reasons, because the trouble with our present system, in a way, puts too much of a carrot for the wrong sort of immigrants who want to come here to get welfare. And so we want to say, no, you have to live here for 10 years before you can get citizenship. And with citizenship, all the benefits of welfare and pensions and all that sort of thing, you live here and contribute, and pay taxes and be a decent person for 10 years, and then you can apply for citizenship and get the rewards that come with it. You have to put in the work first before you get the rewards.
Realistically, why should people come here immediately and be on the welfare payment? A lot of people are quite angry about that, I think.
Yes, exactly. You would attract the right kind of immigrants who are coming for the right reasons.
Now, Mark, I wanted to talk about free speech, something that is being compressed quite a bit in Australia at present. Yeah,
I think privacy and free speech are an area where both Liberal and Labor are terrible. They're both in cahoots on a lot of these terrible sort of laws, like hate speech laws. Peter Dutton didn't vote for Albo's digital ID, but that's not because he doesn't like the idea. It's because he wants his own version. A lot of these are Liberal Party ideas that Labor has adopted. And so we're against all of those. We don't want the government to have digital ID and have to show your papers to go about your business. We don't want central bank digital currencies where they can control, who you spend money with, how much you spend on various different things. We don't want there to be social media bans. We don't want there to be a e-safety commissioner, so-called, telling us what we can and can't say. We don't want the government spying on us, collecting our metadata. We want people to be able to maintain their privacy. If anything, the cameras should be pointed inwards at the government, not outwards at us. They're the ones that should be justifying themselves, and they're the ones that should, if there's nothing to hide, have nothing to fear. You know what I mean?
And we don't want them spying on us, and we don't want them telling us what we can and can't say in case we hurt someone's feelings.
It's a huge one, and it's so much under attack. And this has happened in the last 12 to 18 months right across the world. All of these different countries suddenly, since COVID, have started to crack down on free speech. They realised that they controlled the narrative very tightly during COVID with censorship of information that they didn't want out, but eventually it got out. And it seems like they're trying to prepare for the next onslaught by making sure that no one's allowed to say anything that's not approved by the government. So they have so-called disinformation laws. But what does that mean? The government doesn't care if you say 2 + 2 = 5. They're quite happy for you to peddle outright falsehoods, aren't they?
Yes, like their health program, Women and People with a Cervix. I'm afraid only women have a cervix.
Yes. So misinformation and disinformation is government speak for truth that they don't like, truth that interferes with the government's narrative. And that's what they want to clamp down on. We're against all of that. We think that the best way to overcome bad information is better information, but there has to be a free exchange of ideas for that to be able to come to light. So we're against all that. We want to have a constitutional amendment to enshrine free speech, similar to the First Amendment in the USA. We think it's that important.
Otherwise, we're going to slip down the road of the UK, aren't we, where people are being put in prison, for example, for saying that men can't give birth.
Yeah, I think that in New South Wales, where they've recently passed legislation that's just as bad, that they can say that you were thinking the wrong things, and they can say that someone was harmed by your Facebook post, and it's just awful. And this is bipartisan. All the worst laws are generally bipartisan. Liberal and Labor are in cahoots.
Yes, it seems no one has the strength to stand up from the Liberal parties at all. And for listeners who are a bit unsure what we're talking about, in the UK at the moment, a woman who used to run a antenatal clinic and for couples, for women giving birth, she is now in court and could go to prison for saying that men can't give birth to a child, which is the actual truth. Men cannot give birth and men cannot breastfeed. And she's risking prison for saying that.
Prison, it's awful. And Kirralie Smith has been dragged before the courts multiple times just for speaking truth like that and threatened to be sued. And it's makes it unlawful to offend, insult, or humiliate based on race, colour, or national or ethnic origin. It's already illegal, but Section A says no, even to offend is illegal. But people can be offended by all sorts of things, right, that weren't necessarily aggressive. They're just offended by your opinion. But now they're doubling down. They're making these laws go much, much further than Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act. Even for thinking something that might offend someone is now illegal.
They could be offended by the way you look at them. We're going to have a short break there, Mark, and after we come back, I'm going to ask you about how people can cast their vote to make a difference, because that is a big question that's being asked by many Australians at the moment. Can I vote for a minor party and still make a difference? We'll be back in a sec.
Sure.
Memories are bittersweet, but I got to keep my feet on the ground, 'cause the sound of change reminds me again that what's gone just won't come back. Change is coming. Change is coming.
Mark, I wanted to wind up this coverage of your policy by looking at how Australians can vote and make a difference. In the federal election, we're confronted with a small voting piece of paper, which is relevant to our electorate, where we live. And then we're confronted with the tablecloth, this big long sheet of paper which has got, hundreds of names on it. You think, heavens above, I don't know what to do. Can we just look at the small piece of paper first, Mark? How can people vote on that and make a difference?
Yeah, we have compulsory preferential voting for the lower house for that small ballot paper. So you must number every square at the federal election. And that also means that there's no such thing as a wasted vote. It's a myth that voting for a minor party throws away your vote, and so you need to vote for the lesser evil of the majors. You do need to choose between the lesser evil of the majors, but they don't have to be your number one choice. You can put any good parties, freedom parties. I would say parties like the Libertarian Party, Family First, the Heart Party, One Nation. Put any of those that you've got running in your area, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Then put the less bad of the majors, then the worst of the majors, and then the Greens, and then the Teals. That's what I would personally recommend. The Teals are like the dishonest Greens. I'd rather the honest Greens are less bad than the dishonest Greens, being the Teals. But when you do that, now it's unlikely that any of those minor parties will win. It's likely that it'll go to the Coalition or Labor. One of them will get your preference above the other, and so that's how you'll make sure that the worst party stays out of power. If you give your first preference, or if there's a few of them, first, second, third, whatever, to the freedom parties or the minor right parties or whatever you want to call them, it sends a strong message. It says to, say, the Liberal Party, okay, you scraped over the line, you beat Labor, which is what you wanted to do, but you're going to get a few bruises along the way, and you have to realise that you need to do better, that you can't just keep going to the left.
So, on the small piece of paper, the one relevant to your electorate, it's fine to put minor parties first. You could put the Libertarians first. You can put, One Nation first, or Trumpet of Patriots, whatever it is, because they probably won't win, but your preference will come down, and make sure you put, say, Liberal well ahead of Labor and Greens and Teals. But you have to number all of the boxes, yes?
You have to number all of the boxes. And so if on a like a hypothetical ballot paper, you might put Libertarian, Family First, One Nation, Liberal, Labor, Greens. So,
Right, so you're not wasting your vote at all. You're still being influential, but you're pointing out that you want
Yes.
some of these minor parties to be ahead of them.
yes.
Okay, that's on the small piece of paper. That's the easy bit, really. Now we go to the big tablecloth, which can hardly fit in a polling booth. What do you do with that?
So the Senate is really, really important.
Yeah, just to hold on for a second, Mark. The lower house, which is, whoever wins, Liberal or Labor, and whoever is the Prime Minister, that comes from the lower house, and they vote on bills and then put the new rules, the bills, up to the upper house, which is the Senate. And the Senate then vote to get those through. So that's why the Senate is important, yes?
And this is where it is actually possible to get some minor parties into the Senate. We could get one per state, and there'd be 6 crossbench senators who are not Green. And this is where Malcolm Roberts sits. This is where Craig Kelly in New South Wales is aiming for. This is where Ralph Babbitt sits from Victoria. But there's not many, sort of Freedom Party senators, whereas there's 12 Green senators. So we need to outnumber the Greens, or at least match them, with a right-wing crossbench. And so on your big tablecloth ballot, number all of the freedom-friendly parties first, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many there are.
And this is across the top, is it, Mark?
Yeah, across the top is fine. People that vote below the line generally know what they're doing there. They're not needing it explained to them. For the average person who wants to get it over and done with, just vote above the line, meaning just number the boxes at the top of above the line, above each column. If you put the Libertarians number 1 and other freedom-friendly parties, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many there are, then the less bad of the major parties, then your vote will have the maximum impact. What would be unfortunate, and I'm afraid that one minor party might advise this, is they might say, just vote us number 1 and then the coalition number 2 and forget about all those other minor parties. If that happens, then I don't think you should trust that particular party. That's a disruption tactic. You need to use your preferences to say, no, it's party A, number 1, B,
right,
whatever it is, number 2, E, number 3, and so on. All of the freedom-friendly parties numbered first, and then the coalition. That way you maximise your chances. So in Queensland, you've got a few good options. Pauline Hanson's not bad. She's not great on everything. She abstained from voting against the hate speech laws, but over the course of her career, she's been a force for good. You've got Jared Rennick, who's great on most things. Bit of a socialist in our opinion on financial and economic matters, but he's great on free speech. He's great on COVID. You've got the Libertarian Jim Wilmot, who, of course, I would say is excellent on everything. If you can't get your number 1 choice, take your number 2. And if you can't get your number 2 choice, take your number 3. But make sure that Senate spot goes to one of those people and not just see them all out on their ear.
So across the top of the tablecloth, you might have 15 boxes. You don't have to number every box down to 15. You could just go 1 to 8, couldn't you?
Yes, I think last time it was 1 to 6 that you had to do. But I would say just number as many. You don't have to stop there. You can keep going until you've numbered all of them if you want to. Just make sure that you put all of the freedom-friendly parties first, and then the less bad of the major parties. As long as you've done that, now if you can't decide between the Socialist Alliance and the Socialist Alternative as to who should get your 16th vote and who should get your 17th, you don't actually have to get right down to that in the upper house.
No, you don't have to put a number next to them at all.
No, you don't have to put a number next to them at all. They're not going to win anyway.
Right, Mark. Well, we've covered immigration, we've covered free speech, we've looked at the how to vote process. Now, in the very first episode where I interviewed you, the last episode, I asked listeners if they had any questions, and I did have some questions come in. So before you go, I'd like you to answer them. We've had the first one from Wendy in Ballina. And she says, would you change the current system of students with special needs be included in mainstream schools? This inclusive policy might benefit the kids with special needs, but it has badly affected the education of my kids as their learning is constantly disrupted. I don't think she means to be negative towards the disabled kids or the other kids, but she's just talking about the disruption to her kids.
Well, Ballin is a beautiful place, so good on Wendy for living in such a nice place. The thing with this question is that nobody should be answering that question for everybody else on a national scale. These are the sort of decisions that need to be made on a case-by-case basis by families and by schools. And so the answer to that question is decentralisation, decentralise education. Let's have some schools that integrate everybody and some schools that are just for the elite and some schools that are just for special needs, and let parents decide what's best for their kids and where they want to send them. So I don't think that we need to have one answer, a one-size-fits-all answer to that sort of question.
Okay. I think there is that aspect that there's the kids with disabilities, but then there's the other thought that perhaps some of these kids, and certainly not all, might be calling out or might be disruptive and interrupt with the education of the others. So you're saying that you should be having some special schools, special needs schools, some normal schools, and then others can integrate if they want to. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that let the market decide, basically. Give parents an education voucher and say you can spend this at any kind of school that you want to, or even use it for the cost of home educating. Let parents decide and let schools emerge that suit the needs of parents. So if parents want a certain kind of school, those schools will come onto the market and do well. And if parents don't want a certain kind of school, then those won't do well. People will vote with their feet. So I don't know what every school will look like, and I don't think that anybody should be trying to centrally plan how that looks. So will they be integrated? Will they be separated? Will they be streamed? I can't answer that. There might end up being many different options, and people can choose those options that suit them best.
Yep. Okay. All right. Next one from Justin in Cleveland. Now, I don't know where that Cleveland is. There's one in New South Wales and there's one in Queensland. Justin says, surely businesses like betting companies, casinos and investment companies must be regulated. It says, can you ask Mark? So would those sort of companies be regulated?
Now, in terms of investment, it's a little bit hard to understand. I don't know exactly what the person was asking.
Yes, I know, Mark, that in the last episode we spoke about the market actually deciding, and the market won't go to bad actors. But what Justin's referring to, I think, is that if someone has a certain amount of money, like $100,000, and they invest it with an investment firm, and that investment firm goes broke, well, the rest of the population might say, oh, I'm not going to go and invest with them, but that's a bit late for that person who invested $100,000. You need some sort of regulation.
There's always going to be regulation, especially with banking. There's regulation by central planners, and then there's regulation by the market. Market-based regulation means everybody having a say, everybody voting with their feet and supporting those businesses that do a good job and not supporting those that don't. Regulation by central planners is to say that the government knows best, but often the government doesn't know best. In terms of casinos, the state governments make billions of dollars per year from gambling revenue. The casinos, there's not many casinos, but we've got RSL clubs and bowling clubs and leagues clubs and so on, which are basically casinos in every suburb. And the state government makes billions of dollars out of revenue out of that. And then the state governments protect those businesses. Other kind of regulation is just to say that anybody that sells a certain service, whether that's cigarettes or whether that's gambling or whatever it is, has certain obligations like not selling to children, making sure that people are in their right mind and not inebriated and things like that. So those sort of common sense rules can still apply without having monopoly protections. Do you know what I mean? So anybody that has a poker machine would have to comply with regulations about how that is used and marketed. But it wouldn't be that, no, there's this big bowling club has 1,000 poker machines and the pub next door is not allowed to have one.
It's a little bit like the schools. It would be up to the schools and the businesses to make very clear to the public what they do and probably what they don't do in their description of their business.
Yes, exactly.
Mark had a question from Kerry. She made it clear that it's not her real name and she doesn't say where she's from. She's a cleaner. She says, I'm a cleaner who works for an NDIS registered company. I have 9 clients and most can't do things themselves. But there are 2 clients who seem fully capable. One's a family where the teenage kids run riot and leave the house a mess. The mum is a university teacher. Oh, she's a lecturer. And the dad works in his home office all day. The other family live in a lovely house. They have a boy they say is autistic, but he seems fully okay to me. He doesn't yell out, he's very tidy and goes to a normal school. Dad works and she works part-time. The confusing bit is next. It talks about her wage, but it goes on to say, I think they're ripping off the system. Now, there's a lot of chatter about this, Mark, people ripping off NDIS. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, they've just created bad incentives, haven't they? So what it sounds like is the taxpayers are paying some NDIS provider, who knows how much, but probably double or triple what Kerry actually earns. And so, 2/3 of it goes to some agency that does nothing except pass on the contract. And then Kerry gets some of it. Good for her. But this family, or these 2 families, it sounds like, are quite capable of cleaning their own house. And we all have houses that need cleaning. And if we all start saying, well, that's the government's responsibility to pay for a cleaner for me, I mean, it just gets absurd, doesn't it? And so through the NDIS, which is meant to be caring for the disabled, it's just become a form of, well, get yourself a friendly doctor, get your kid diagnosed with something, and the poor kid who's told he's autistic, just so that the family can get money, is a victim of all this too, right? So get a diagnosis, and then get on the list. And then now it's everybody else's responsibility to clean your house.
Yes. We
don't send all of our problems to Canberra. And so it's hard to answer very specifically how that would be fixed. It needs an entire top to bottom review and a broom through the whole thing.
Yeah, it sounds like the parents simply aren't taking responsibility for what's going on in the household. From my perspective. Okay, this is from Anonymous. The government gets lots of dollars from taxing wages above $20,000. You say you won't tax income up to $100,000 for couples. How will you make up this shortfall?
Yeah, that's a question that we get a lot. There's a couple of things I'll say before I try and answer it. One is that we're conditioned to put the government first. How will the government afford to do all the things that they want to do? The government is just people like you and me. And what do we do if we can't afford all the things that we want to do? Well, we have to find a way, right? But when it's the government, it's when they raise taxes, they don't have to worry about, okay, well, how is the Jones family going to afford all the things they want to do if we're taxing them more? The Jones family just has to cope with it, right? That's their perspective. But when it comes to the government being able to do all the things they want to do, we've all got to be worried about that and say, let's make sure that the government is okay. You know what I mean? I think we should change our perspective on that first of all, and say let's make sure that families are okay. A family earning $100,000 combined income is paying $21,000 or something tax, and that doesn't leave them that much to live on.
Yes, we don't have a reciprocal relationship with the government, do we?
No, exactly. You can't say, well, sorry, the government didn't do a good job this year in providing the things that they said they would. so I'm not paying next year. No, you're going to pay anyway.
Yeah.
Also, what I'd say, so if you can massively cut taxes, society will be massively wealthier. We might be, twice as wealthy. A society that's twice as wealthy then can say, okay, how do we afford those public goods that we want? And we'll have, much more significant means to do that. We don't have to just start from the status quo and say, how will the government provide those things? Because we're used to the government providing those things. And then the last part of the answer, to be more specific, there's many, many things that can be easily cut straight away. Abolish 1.1 billion going to the ABC to begin with. That can be done on day one. ABC can stand on their own 2 feet. The NBN, is still losing money. That shouldn't be topped up by the taxpayer. If the business isn't viable, they should be forced to sell their assets to someone else who can run a decent business. The costs of net zero, all the subsidies going into wind and solar, all this clean energy investment fund, where they basically throw money at any harebrained idea, even if it doesn't work. There's all the corporate welfare. There are so many industry associations that get government money, and they don't just want to say like buy our products. They're great. They want a government body to market their products for them.
Mark, there's so many activist organisations that get government money.
Exactly, and you've spoken about some of them, ACON and various things like that.
Yep.
And some of them even run out of things to do. But then they have to create things to do for themselves, right?
And it's not only ACON, Mark. There's a group called Headspace, which has just been given $1 billion by Albanese to work with young people who have gender and anxiety issues. They very much brand themselves as a LGBTQA group, an advocacy group. And they have a special line where young people, youth, kids, can ring up, talk to a clinician without their parents' permission about their gender concerns. These are the same clinicians probably who have been heavily criticised by Justice Andrew Strum in a case just this month because of their activism and their lack of interest in the general health of kids. So this group just been given $1 billion. It's like we need some Elon Musk figure to go through the government and stop all this waste. Anyway, sorry, Mark, that's my rant for the day, but it does lead on to the last serious question from a listener. From M in Western Australia. Very straightforward. Would the Libertarians stop all gender-affirming treatment of people below 21? Odd age, she's claimed, 21, but...
Yeah, so we would restrict that to legal adults. A legal adult is defined as 18. I've never heard anyone in Australia trying to change that to 21. I know it's 21 in some parts of America. So I don't have, any thought that the definition of an illegal adult should be changed to 21. Although when you go to the opera or classical music, you're an adult when you're 40. You get a discounted ticket if you're under 40. In that case, right? But when you travel on an airline, you're an adult when you're 12. So there are some exceptions to that.
Yeah. I think, Mark, what M could be getting at is that the brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25.
Yeah.
So gender-affirming treatment, example, puberty blockers and hormones and stuff, they affect your brain. So I think she's trying to edge up to that brain level of 25, which really is an ambit claim, I think, in these days.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think of that, Phil?
Oh, I'd like to see it at 25 because the brain isn't developed and we're stopping the brain development of all of these young people by feeding them puberty blockers and hormones. But you think everyone's used to the age of 18. Let's start at 18. Let's start at 18 and then we'll try and boost it up a bit to 25. That's my view.
Right. Well, 18 is the age where you can vote, where you can buy alcohol, where you can, serve in the military and all those other things currently.
So the Libertarians would limit gender-affirming treatment to only 18 plus. Is that right, the short answer?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, we had one silly one come in. Now, this is from Brad. I'll try and put on my serious voice. Would the Libertarians ban men who have silly and unnecessary haircuts from playing rugby league? I ask because my boy wants a different haircut every time after watching the NRL, and it's costing a fortune. This is a family issue.
Well, we could have a separate silly haircut division of the NRL. How about that? We have the serious haircuts in their own league, and the silly haircut people can all play each other. How about that?
Then we'd need a silly haircut division of government and perhaps a minister for it.
Why not?
And that was Mark Hornshaw, the Director of Policy for the Libertarian Party. It had been my intention to interview all the other minor parties leading into the election, but they all agree on 80% of the topics. So I decided I wouldn't do that. And Mark has not come down on any of the other parties. He's been quite supportive of them. So that's it for my pre-election episodes. The next episode, I'll be interviewing Claire Rowe, a child psychologist, on just what has happened to childhood these days. You've been listening to Filtered the Podcast. My name is Phil Dye. I'll talk to you again soon.